Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Ben Mathis Show. Today, we're going over what separates professionals from amateurs. One thing I've noticed in our industry in real estate, and it's holding true across a lot of different industries and practices, is that there's a very big gap between people who are actual professionals and the amateurs. And this all came to me when we were having a discussion around some people who are new in our industry and some of the terminology we just use on an everyday basis. And after you're in it for about 3 to 6 months, you pick it up pretty quickly and it becomes a second language to you. So you use it all the time. However, if you talk to someone who is completely uneducated in real estate or they've just never dealt with it, it sounds like you're talking a foreign language and you sound uber professional. They're like, holy cow, that person knows what they're talking about. They know everything about real estate because of some of the lingo that we use. And I thought about this, I thought, well, that's a really big step going from not having any knowledge into thinking that someone's an absolute professional just based on the way they talk. So as I thought about it more, I began digging into that gap that I believe exists between a true professional and an amateur. And the biggest thing that I kept coming back to was the practice or the time that was put in by professionals. So this is the intentional time you're putting in to develop your skill set so that you can perform at a higher level or the highest level possible. And as I thought more about that, I really started thinking about people who truly separated them even within their industry. So I love using sports as an example just because it's something that a lot of people can relate to, and it's a really good indicator and demonstrator of these qualities. So one of the most intense people that I've heard who was ever at practice was Kobe Bryant. And he played professional basketball. So the thing that he said in an interview one time that really caught my attention was, if you think about it, when you get into the NBA and you're playing in those professional ranks, the separation of just sheer talent is very small. Most of the people in there are either genetically gifted, they're naturally talented athletes, they're taller, they have better conditioning, whatever it is, they're naturally good. So that just depending on your talent alone won't really separate you from the pack. So the question goes back to what really separates these high performing professionals from everyone else. Because once you get into that rarefied air, it's like the top 0.5% of people, you're already in pretty exclusive company. So how do people go from just being an all-star to a superstar? Again, going back to Kobe Bryant, I remember a story that was told about him when he was playing in the Olympics. And he was, one morning everybody was coming down for breakfast and it was like around 6:30 in the morning. And a lot of his teammates, it was LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, they all came down for breakfast and they're all superstars in their own right. And when they came downstairs, they were getting ready to eat breakfast, go to their first practice of the day, and then they had another one later in the day. And what they noticed was that Kobe was already sitting downstairs with both of his knees iced. And it was because he had already got in a full workout before anybody else had gotten up, and he was ready to go practice with his team on their normal practices. And Kobe touched on this after he retired, and he said he got this mentality that everybody is so good that he had to find a way to separate himself. And what really stood out was the incremental progress that he focused on. So he thought that, if I just practice for an extra hour a day, 5 days a week, he said that gives me such a huge advantage over a year's time that within a year, I've already separated myself to the point that you can never catch up as long as I don't stop doing that. So that's one way he really made himself into the ultimate competitor that he was. Actually has a really interesting story around him about how he actually failed at one point in playing basketball. And he came from a basketball family, so it was a big deal. And he talked about how that gave him the drive to become the superstar that he was. So I say all that to go back to the point of intentional intensity is one of the key factors in people who just go and practice just to practice and hang out and say, I did my practice, and people who are actually attempting to improve their skill set. And I get asked all the time, why are you so intense? Where does that sense of urgency come from? And in my head, I just have this knowledge that there is always someone out there trying to beat me. Maybe not me directly, right? Maybe not, they're not like, oh, I know Ben, I want to beat him. It's the mindset of they really want to win. They want to beat me and do better than me. And they're going to outwork me. They're out there practicing when I'm resting. They're working hard on their skill sets. They're getting better at stuff. They're pushing themselves into areas where they're not comfortable so that they have growth. So looking at that, it really comes down to 5 key things that I've found really helps me separate what is a professional versus an amateur. So the first thing is practice harder than you play. Practice harder than you play. And this was drilled into me when I played sports. So there was always a time, and this is true if you watch any kind of professional collegiate sports, whenever a player gets injured and he goes out for a little bit, when he comes back from that injury, they always say, oh, he's got to get up to game speed. And what that means is you can practice as hard as you want. Most of the time, there's an adjustment within the game. Now, that being said, there's a guy in CrossFit named Matt Frazier who has won several years in a row and claimed the title of top CrossFit title of the world's most fittest man. And one thing he is renowned for is his intense practice regime. It is unbelievable the amount of work he's willing to put himself through. So when he goes out on the course and competes in front of thousands and millions of people, they go, wow, it looks really easy for him. What they don't see is the 350 days of work he's putting in, the 3 or 4 practices a day, the intentionally working on different things, and he's always intense about it. So the documentaries that have been done, it shows him always working out as hard or harder than he would in an actual event. So the second key thing is consistency. This is such a beautiful thing, right? So consistency is what will really separate the amateurs from the professionals. So professionals will always show up even when they don't feel like showing up, even when they're tired, even when they don't really they haven't had a great day. They still go and do their jobs every single day. They're always seeking ways to get better every single day. They're always finding some nugget in their day that they can say, you know what, this day was a win because of this thing that I did. And I always think of how amateurs will always practice until they get it right, and professionals practice until they get it perfect. So they don't sit back and say, I got it right this one time. I'm good with that. I'm ready to go play now in front of everybody. They go, you know what? I missed it 1 time out of 10. What happened there? And what did I do right these other 9 times so that I can continue being consistent? The third key thing that separates professionals from amateurs is knowing your circle of competence, right? Knowing your circle of competence. So this comes from Warren Buffett. It's all across every industry now. It's basically knowing what your strengths are and playing in those areas and developing your skills at such a high level in areas that you're naturally skilled in that you just totally crush everyone else. What we see amateurs do is they get so caught up in trying to do everything, they really accomplish nothing. Right, so they'll go out and find something that's interesting to them. They're not really committed to getting better at it. They say, oh, it's interesting, I want to try it out, and then they never get better at it. And that's because it's outside of their circle of competence, and that can often throw you off your course and cause you to fail permanently. Remember, failure is not bad on its own. We want to fail because it helps us learn. And when it comes to getting outside of your circle of competence, when you fail in those areas, you tend to take it as a loss and not as a learning experience. So the fourth key thing is your goal versus a process. Amateurs have goals, professionals have processes. This is such a huge thing to learn. I mean, it is incredible how we can get so caught up in this end thing that happens to us that we throw away the process. So one of my favorite examples of this is Annie Duke wrote a book. And she's a professional poker player, for those of you who don't know, are one of the most winning females of all time in the World Series of Poker, the consummate professional. And in her book, she's talking about something that the poker professionals called resulting. resulting. And what this is say you play a hand perfectly, right? You play it with all the probabilities, you know the cards, you know the probabilities of you winning, you see that you have a very high chance of winning, 75%, 80%, 85%, whatever it is. And then maybe whenever the card come out, you lose. And what typical amateurs will do is they go through the whole process and they say, those cards were terrible. I will never play that hand again because I lost that one time. You have just committed the mortal error of resulting. And that's where you focus on the outcome and not your process. So professionals really have a process. They love the process. They're always learning from their process. They enjoy the hunt more than the kill is a simple way to put it. So always be focusing on your process. The fifth key thing, and this one is really interesting in today's world because things have gotten softer, in my opinion, is professionals seek thoughtful criticism. They seek thoughtful criticism. Amateurs avoid it like plague. They don't want to be told that they're not doing something right. They don't want to be called out on different growth areas for them or their businesses or their personal lives. They avoid it at all costs. So always sit back and look at and say, you know what? Am I getting thoughtful criticism in any area? Am I seeking it out? That can be through a coach. That can be through a friend group. That can be through a peer group. That can be through an accountability buddy. Whatever it is, are you seeking out thoughtful criticism that will help you grow? Not in a malicious manner that's going to make you feel bad and doubt yourself. It's more of a, what are my blind spots? Where can I really improve? Again, staying inside of that circle of competence, and you can always get better in that circle of competence. So these are 5 key things that have helped me really differentiate between professionals and amateurs. So I'm asking you, what are you? Are you a professional or are you an amateur? Or are you masquerading as a professional and in reality you have the skill set of an amateur? That's something that's really common as well. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions on this. I appreciate the comments and stuff you guys have been sending my way. That's where this actually came from. Someone asked me some questions around this and here we are doing a video on it. So if you have anything else you guys are curious about or questions, happy to address them. Look forward to hearing how you are moving from amateur to professional.
This is a Comfort Fit original reflecting in your ears.